Why, good morning, friends. I'm a gentleman. I'm a gentleman by the name of Eric Strauss. And sometimes I'm referred to as Host Eric. Sometimes I'm referred to as Strauss. A lot of times I'm referred to as that asshole. But I was going to title this originally Another Day, Another Holler. Seeing, lots of hollering at people. But right before I started the stream, I read a comment from Fumble Hot saying, "Of course you like being interviewed. You're an ESTP." And I said, "Okay." The funny thing about it is there's a significant amount of I wish, That's the funny thing. Well, Ron Allen's line, you make a good point. Certainly, a decent number of people who call me ESTP probably got that from C.S. Joseph. But what I think is weird and amusing is that people accuse me of being an ESTP like it's some sort of insult or something. As I indicated, there's definitely an element of I wish in ESTP. Like that would be cool or an ESTP. It's not like I have anything against them. My own daughter's an ESTP. So I don't understand how this works as an insult, It's like, no, you're not that. You're not intuitive hard. You're a badass. Wait, you're insulting me, right? Flow State's an ESTP. Legends Falls an ESTP. If you were looking for something, if you're looking for somebody to, have your back in a dark neighborhood, and you go, I'm going to get an ESTP, and you go get me? I mean, I will be help in the dark neighborhood. Say, hey, excuse me, sir. It would seem to me that you're trying to be physically intimidating. And I think we both know that's not okay. I wake up in the hospital the next day. Yeah, I do value SI. That's why I'm constantly massaging my junk. Yeah, I'd rely on I'd call Octavia Silva to protect me in the dark neighborhood. The dark alley or whatever, I am tall. But and I am an action type. The problem is, if I see someone's about to take a swing at me or something, I try to get in a quick explanation about how that's not okay. Between this and pow, right? I'm 7'8" Although according to Catherine Favre, I'm a counterphobic 6. Yeah, massaging your junk is definitely SI. Al Bundy, I think, is definitely has SI tool function probably, or could be a Dom. But he's always got his hands down his pants, right? I do too. That's why I keep the camera right here. Right down here. You can't see what's happening. What's Eric doing? Nobody knows. It's a mystery. So it's like, I just find it funny that's how they want to insult me. I mean, who's ever been insulted by being called an ESTP? Don't people want to be an ESTP? I mean, I guess that the reason is, well, I claim I'm an ENTP and I'm in typology. So if I'm wrong about that, then I lose all credibility. But I don't know. Another day, another holler. Holla back, girl. I ain't no holla back girl. Okay? I'll do the hollering. You holler back. Okay, well, I intuited how Catherine accomplished that on her test. Why you get an asterisk, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. So there's a section of tests where you have fill in the blanks where you write adjectives and stuff. I'm pretty sure that that she basically just says if you put more than the 2 words in those fill in the blanks that aren't on my list of normal answers, then you're a 6. And she seemed to basically be complaining in the results that there are some people who keep saying it depends on the answers. Well, of course, there's 2 kinds of people who keep saying it depends on the answers. There are those who are smarter than the test, like me, and it depends because the questions are poorly worded. Or there are people who are INFPs. They can never answer any question because they're using their feelings and their extroverted intuition. It's always impossible because it's not a real situation for them. They don't have real feelings about it, and so they don't know. Yeah, I mean, you make a good point there, Roxer, that obviously, since I do type police, there's always going to be an angle of attack that says you're not the type you say you are. So, aha, you know. Except the problem people have in trying to accuse me of being an ESTP is this question I always ask. If I'm an ESTP, what in the world does an ENTP look like? You know? And I've never gotten any satisfactory answer to that question. Because obviously, I'm just so stereotypical, you know? The ultimate insult in typology seems to be you're mistyped, so you obviously suck at typing. Yeah. Or around here, clearly TI polar. That might be true that a doctor cannot do his own surgery, but a typologist should be able to type himself. That's a fair expectation because I mean, look, the people who are going to be the best typologists are going to be high TI and high NE. And the reason is because even if other people might be as good at determining someone's type, they're not going to be as good at explaining why. And, you know, okay, well, look, Genexial, I'm sure that doctor that did his own surgery on himself was an ESTP. As an ENTP, if I get an injury, it goes like this. Ah! So I probably won't do my own surgery. You think I'm a very stereotypical ENTP? You are correct. I do not claim, I've never claimed at any point to be a different kind of ENTP, a special ENTP or something. I'm as stereotypical as they get. I am straight up like the easiest question on the typing test, right? Like if you're taking some sort of training, why can't I find a fucking lighter? I knew I should have answered that poll question, can't find a lighter. God, what's more irritating than not being able to find any lighter? There's only really one thing that's more irritating than not finding a lighter. And that one thing is definitely leaf blowers. Although I'm with all you anti-glitter people, don't get me wrong. Evelyn S. made the incredibly wise observation that glitter is the herpes of the arts and crafts world. I really thought that was perfect. Such a great turn of phrase, you know. Glitter is the herpes of the arts and crafts world. Apparently it's bad for dolphins. I never heard that before. I guess just, dolphins can't handle being that fabulous. Thanks, Roxer Wens. Appreciate it. Yeah, I have been doing typology for a long time, and I definitely have gotten better at it over time. See, that's the thing about SI versus NI is SI people really need to learn by doing and to understand through examples. And NI people don't. And so it's like it's very conceivable that an NI person would be an excellent typologist, but not an excellent person to hire to type people, because instead of having a bunch of examples and comparables to reference, and that's how they come to their conclusions, they just intuited it, So it's like I could totally conceive of somebody starting being a typologist, being very right because they grok it with their NI, but not really being able to do it, like not really being able to serve clients because they can't explain why well enough. For me, it took me a long time to make a lot of mistakes and to get fooled again, to get fooled lots of times, because it's important for me to get fooled so that I won't get fooled again. It's unlikely that I get fooled and stay fooled indefinitely. It's much more likely that I get fooled and realize the next day, I got fooled. But then the thing is, I won't get fooled that same way again. So it does take a lot of invested time for an ENTP, me anyway, to get it down. I have it down now pretty well, Like, for example, I used to think Octavia Silva was an ISFP, but now I know she's an ENTJ. She's one of Dave Superpower's 512 subtypes, an ENTJ who looks just like an ISFP. How does one say that description sounds just like the boy who played DM in his game on Friday night because his shoes were showing off the same way, and so is his briefcase? You don't? Even when Even when you do, makes no sense at all to me. So the ENTJ that looks like an ISFP is what? The quartz pangolin. Correct. And of course, as a variant, she might be the rose quartz variant of the pangolin. I mean, I had that exact experience with my girlfriend, Roxer Wins. In the hour that I typed her when she hired me to type her, I concluded she was an ENFJ. But then I started talking to her in a non-professional fashion. Basically, I started hitting on her, I guess you'd say. And but that was after, that was not during the session. Okay, I want to stress that will never happen. Now, obviously, I'm not single anymore. But even if I were, it would never happen that I would switch to, hey girl, in the middle of a session. It would have to be a separate conversation, as it was with Rachel. I was very much on point during doing my job as I'm supposed to. Okay, so I didn't use the session that she paid for to hit on her. I waited until she showed up at the next live stream, and I was like, hey girl, hey. You want to do a tarot reading for me? I would love for you to do a tarot reading for me. That was my way to get her in private conversation, you know? I didn't have any sense of that at all until Winston's mom, in the typing session, she made a point of telling me how old she was. And then I thought, I wonder if she'd tell me that because she's interested in me. It still took me another day or two to sort of process that. That's another reason why I'm not an ESTP. Is that what she meant? I think so. I think my intuition's right on this one. I think I'm gonna try to have a private conversation with her. And I did. And then the rest is all history, you know. She's in there sleeping like a little angel, fretting about her hair. I love the shit the girls fret about. So dumb. She's like, she cut her hair, and I guess she's not happy with the way she did her bangs or something. Last night when we were streaming, she gave a general warning to everybody out there: don't try to cut your own bangs, especially if you're TE polar, I would say. But so she wants to go get a haircut. Of course, we're still in Los Angeles County, so you can't just go to the barbershop. You know, you gotta make an appointment. Anyway, but we're going to go to the barbershop today so she can get her hair fixed. I didn't even notice anything went wrong with it at all, but she spent much of yesterday clucking it at the inadequacy of her own haircut, I guess. And I guess she's unsatisfied with them, so we have to go to the barbershop today. It's like, yeah, Rachel, I'm pretty sure your hair looks exactly the same as it did yesterday. But no, it doesn't, apparently. You know, she made some minor changes that she's really not happy with. So, pro tip, pin it up in the center until they grow out. Well, I will mention that to her, but I don't. Yeah, she's just clucking. She's just clucking at it. And she's in the belief that she's of the belief that it can be fixed by a barber. So that's good. It's not like she pulled a Britney Spears and shaved her head, you know. It's your type's shadow superego. My type's shadow superego. I mean, here's the thing. I was talking in this interview with this guy last night that he interviewed me. He brought up the four sides of the mind. and his own enthusiasm for the four sides of the mind, I explained to him, okay, so he told me that my four sides of the mind are ENTP, INTJ, ESFP, and I don't remember the last one. But I'm like, oh, ISFJ. I'm like, okay, I get the ISFJ part. I get the ISFJ part. Now, it wasn't a typing session. The guy interviewed me. It was a young INTJ guy. His name's Art of Self Mastery. I think that's probably the name of his channel. But I didn't ask like where it was going to be published or when or anything. I just figured it'll come out when it comes out, Anyway, he's asking me about that. And I was like, well, look, it is true that when I'm responding to something traumatic, I act a lot more like an ISFJ in the sense that I retreat primarily to my SI. And to the extent that I need to use judging functions during that time period, I'm more likely to use FE to avoid TIing because I just don't want any conflict, Has he mastered himself? Well, sort of, I guess. He did tell me that he had, over the course of the last, I'm not sure how long, but lost 200 pounds. And he's still fairly thick looking, so he's probably quite large before. So, I mean, in that regard, he has made significant change in his life. Whether that constitutes self-mastery, I don't know. But the thing is, and this is the thing, I wanted to have a nice, friendly conversation with the guy. I didn't want to bust his chops about everything I thought was wrong, But I have my own perception on self-mastery, which is, it's not an outcome, It's like everybody functions more or less optimally on different days and different weeks and goes through phases of down and phases of up and everything. I think that the way to optimize the self then is really to well, I mean, it's sort of like the best way to optimize the self is to not work on the self, but to work on the environment around you so that it's more conducive to your way of being. Like right now, I'm incredibly incubated in a world that is structured very kindly for my ways right now. It hasn't always been like that, but it is like that now. And is it optimal? Well, it's like this. When you're trying to teach somebody something, or if you're trying to make a well, okay, so if you're trying to teach something, or we're trying to make a video game, for example, the amount of challenge is very important. So it's like if you're trying to teach a bunch of kids, and you start with something that's too hard for them, then they will disengage. If you start with something that's too easy for them, they will disengage. So there needs to be a certain amount of challenge in life to keep you engaged, just as in learning. So to the extent that one has one's external environment optimized for one's inclinations, that's not necessarily a way to optimize yourself for other kinds of outcomes. It's like this environment that I'm currently in and my lifestyle that I currently have is very conducive to me doing what I want and what I feel like, and not having external pressures to make me do things that are more work-like that I may not enjoy as much. Is that my optimal self? Well, again, it depends on the time period of your life and what you need right then. You are a continuation of an ongoing story. After Kimberly, did I need this period of time? Yeah, I really did. Has it gone on longer than I would have expected or maybe chosen? Probably, but that has a lot to do with COVID. Right. Not everyone can influence the world around them, though. I hated middle school. So it is absolutely the case that children, for example, are treated like slaves. In other words, children don't choose where they go during the day. They have to go there. And the thing is, it is true that when we rob the individual of their agency and choice making, it's impossible to adjust the environment to make it more optimal to yourself. Octavia Silva says, "Oh my God, horrible FI polar philosophy there. If you're constantly trying to change the external and make up for your internal problems, you'll never be happy with any changes you make." I mean, I totally see it differently. It's like the only reason I'm having internal problems is because something external is not functioning properly. Like, why did I have internal problems when I was with Kimberly? My internal problems were confusion, anger, self-doubt occasionally, uncertainty, skittishness, like anxiety. And the problem was entirely Kimberly. It wasn't me. Please don't forget that. Oh, well, yeah, that's true. When I came back here, I had a lot of caregiving work to do for mom, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to participate in that. But I think you see my point, Octavia Silva, right? Oh, I'm sure there are genuinely problems people need to change within themselves. So when I was a drunk, it wasn't the existence of alcohol that was the problem. It was my behavior with it that was the problem. In that instance, I had to fix myself. I couldn't fix the world, right? But then with Kimberly, whole different ball of wax. I needed to change my world, not myself. And to the extent that I was going to change myself, it would have been incurring damage from a BPD person. In other words, I would have been being successfully gaslit. Because it's not like what was being conveyed to me about myself was anything positive. It was all a bunch of why I suck. Why Eric sucks was Kimberly's primary line of narrative. So, of course, in that circumstance, I needed to change the situation, not myself, because in that situation, myself was perfectly healthy and herself was very unhealthy. Rockstar Wins asks survival tactics for INFJs and INFPs. INFPs, I don't have much idea about what their survival tactics are. They are my supervisor type, so I feel like I understand them kind of poorly. I can explain to you every way in which the INFP fails. Okay, but I cannot really explain to you how they succeed. I mean, the thing is, of all the personality types, INFPs have the most difficulty making a decision and sticking with it more than any other type imaginable. INFPs cannot make a decision, stick with it, follow it through to its fruition. It's like not possible for them. Even when they get into a relationship. I think INFPs are the type that's possibly, besides ESFPs, maybe most likely to cheat. Because they just, and you can hardly blame them in the sense that you can, but if you had as your dominant function your own arbitrary subjective positive and negative feelings, and you have as your tool function the ability to ideate all the different things that might make you feel good and all the different possible relationships with your feelings you might have, then it's obviously going to be really tempting to grass is greener. Well, I know I'm in this relationship, but I can imagine all the other rich emotions that I might be experiencing if I were with the exact right person. So I do think INFPs are very likely to cheat. Every INFP that I've known in person, in real life, has cheated. So that's anecdotal. They could be the exception, not the rule. It's not a good reason to generalize, but I am an SI user, so I tend to do that. Now, INFJs, in general, are likely to stay in the wrong relationship for too long, just like ENTPs are, because we're about statuses, not about realities. So, like, Rachel had a survival tactic when she was stuck in a really bad situation for about 10 years in New York. And her survival tactic was go along as much as she had to get along, and periodically freak out in an explosion of resentment, because she was in an awful situation where the people who were controlling her life, her mom and her mental health facility, it comprised a bunch of NI polar people. So it was like, didn't matter what the truth was, right? It didn't matter what Rachel, it's like they just didn't have any respect for Rachel. Rachel would express, this is what I need to do to be healthy. And they'd say, well, you don't know, you're crazy. So what was Rachel's strategy? I don't know if she ever had a strategy, but in the way that INFJs somehow seem to do, found the miracle. It's like, it took her a long time, but when the right out was discovered, it not only got her out of there, but it won all of the arguments. To me, that's the most important thing. And that's one thing I could never possibly get from any other human being that I get from Rachel, is the opportunity to be proved so right. It's like, it was such a case study, because here I am on the internet smoking weed all day long, and there she is in New York being told that the biggest problem in her life, and that she needs to continue working on, is her addiction to cannabis. And that's what makes her crazy. Of course, that had absolutely nothing to do with it. And as her mom and the awful scumbag at the mental health facility colluded to do a bunch of TE punishment stuff. And I mean, the things like to try to control Rachel and prevent her from smoking weed they had a bunch of awful protocols in place, like taking off the door of her room and making her stay outside all day and stuff like that. It was fucking insane. It had slow boiled to that. That's what happens when TESI is determined to handle their way, you know? Of course, it has to be the case that it has to be the case that for any justice to occur in that situation, there has to be a sudden change, and somebody has to get in there and grab the frame of reference and shake the fuck out of those fuckers, you know? And that's exactly what I did. So once Rachel was over here and I had to call Mercy Mental Health, because actually she was in New York and she was meeting with them, and I asked her to get me on the phone with them. She went in there. They were all smug and comfortable and awful, those people who worked there. And they were doing the same thing to her they always did. But I was on the phone. And by the end of that little session, everybody in that fucking place was running around scrambling for pieces of paperwork to prove they weren't imposing treatment upon a woman who hadn't consented for it, who hadn't consented to it. Boy, the panic in those women's voices. So well deserved. And of course, Rachel's relationship with the rest of her family has gone 180 degrees the other way around. Now they have to walk on eggshells around her. Why? Because they imposed their obvious wrongness upon her for 10 fucking years, and there's no way they can defend it anymore, because I've proved them 100 billion% wrong in every aspect. How much more satisfying could an existence be than that? You know, it's like, she was down by 1 million runs in the bottom of the ninth and hit the most epic grand slam in history, and now and ended up beating them by 1 million runs. How beautiful is that? It was the Taylor's arrest and my dealing with that miscreant of a prosecutor in Pratt, Kansas, and that scumbag criminal of a perjurer in Pratt, Kansas, because I could understandably get no cooperation from Taylor. Basically, it was Taylor's life on the line. Taylor's facing massive amounts of jail time, and even though my approach was correct, don't plea, do fight, do force a jury trial, and make sure you run this evidentiary argument ahead of time, get the key pieces of evidence excluded, and you will be set free, as you should be, because their evidence gathering was totally unacceptable. But I lost that war because I wasn't close enough to the person who was in the battle, and I wasn't close enough. And it's like there was too much of a risk to go in with my thing if it failed, right? And I wasn't going to have to incur the harms if it did fail. So I get that, but it was frustrating anyway. And then I had an equivalent kind of situation where there's this great injustice being perpetrated, but instead of failing or making them uncomfortable or whatever, I just nuked the living fuck out of them. And it was so satisfying. It's like, yes, all of you can indeed, in no uncertain terms, go fuck yourselves. And there's not a damn thing they could say about it either. Well, I guess we have to fuck ourselves now, is all they could say. I will play, in honor of Taylor, this great little song I made. Perjurer. He's a perjurer. perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. Colluding with him is Tracy Beverly. That's why she's not arrested him, I guess, Jim. Undersheriff Barrett, perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. I said, Undersheriff Barrett, he's a perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. Colluding with him is Tracy Beverly. That's why she's not arrested him, I guess, Jim. Undersheriff Barrett, perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. I said, Undersheriff Barrett, he's a perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. Colluding with him is Tracy Beverly. That's why she's not arrested him, I guess, Jim. Undersheriff Barrett, perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. I said, Undersheriff Barrett, he's a perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. Colluding with him is Tracy Beverly. That's why she's not arrested him, I guess, Jim. Undersheriff Barrett, perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. I said, Undersheriff Barrett, he's a perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. Colluding with him is Tracy Beverly. That's why she's not arrested him, I guess, Jim. Undersheriff Barrett, perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. I said, Undersheriff Barrett, he's a perjurer. He's a perjurer. He likes to perjure himself. What? Here's the difference between an ENTP and an ESTP. Let's say I get arrested for meth, and I have a court date coming up, and I get bail at my court date, so I'm released on bail waiting for my trial. I'm going to not smoke any meth between getting arrested and going to trial. Why? Because at that point, I've got a bunch of arguments in play. Okay, this is what happened. They did find this drug at my house, and now they've arrested me. But I'm aware of the fact that they also didn't do it right. They violated a number of procedural protocols. Most importantly, there's a double bind that's prohibited legally. Namely, you can't use evidence you find in a search to justify the search, which is basically what they did. In other words, you can't justify it after the fact, you have to justify it ahead of time. They arrested him before they got into the safe and found anything. So, in other words, they arrested him assuming the search warrant was going to find something arrestable, but they hadn't found anything yet. So those two factors were enough to get him off. And the fact that Undersheriff Barrett perjured himself is indisputable. There's no doubt that he perjured himself, and he made up shit on that affidavit. I read it. I know. The things he claimed were impossible. He claimed that Taylor had made a meth pipe out of a plastic bottle. You can't do that. As an ex-meth addict, trust me, you can't smoke meth out of plastic. So, obviously, the Undersheriff Barrett perjured himself. He made up some shit. Oh, we found a meth pipe in his trash can that was made out of an old medicine bottle. I mean, obviously, Undersheriff Barrett hasn't smoked enough meth to know what he's talking about. And I well know how Taylor smoked it at the time, too. So I can guarantee you he's not smoking like that. He didn't even smoke it out of a regular meth pipe. He smoked it out of a meth bong. So that's insane. Anyway, I would have stopped doing it and prepared myself to win all the arguments. He, like an idiot, said, fuck you all, and continued doing what he was doing, got arrested again. And at that point, it's all my arguments just fall apart because they're all predicated on having a single set of facts to parse through. Now you've got a second arrest and it muddies everything, and it's just like, okay, fuck this noise. I can't fix this anymore. You're not being a good client, Taylor. You need to behave yourself until your court date. Can you describe being high on meth? It's hard to describe. It's a lot like Adderall in some sense, but it's way more hardcore. Like, the thing is, let's say I were to get a teener of meth right now, which is a 16th, half an 8-ball. First of all, that teener of meth, if I were to start doing it now, would last me probably 2 months or something. And that's being sprung as fuck the whole time. It's like, if I were to start smoking meth right now, I definitely wouldn't sleep tonight or tomorrow night. And then I'd crash out. You can't manage it on a the time frame of meth is larger than the time frame of humans. So it's like people are naturally on this sort of 24-hour cycle with the day and the night and such, but you can't do meth and maintain that at all. The only possible way you could do meth and maintain that at all is to pull a Judy Garland. To pull a Judy Garland or a Mickey Rooney. To pull a Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney, which is back when they were children and working in Hollywood, what the studio executives would do would be give them speed in the morning and then give them benzos at night so they could sleep. So it's like speed in the morning, tranquilizers at night, speed in the morning, tranquilizers at night. That's the only way you can manage meth. And then all of a sudden you got yourself a second problem, which is now you're addicted to benzos too. So does Adderall calm you down? It calms me down at the right amount. So what I mean by that is a lot of times I will get up in the morning, I'll take my 2 Adderalls, and then I'll get my last bit of solid sleep. That I slept kind of fitfully through the night because my mind was racing too much. Like even last night, I slept well, but I woke up knowing that my extroverted intuition had not turned off at all during the night, really, even when I was sleeping. Can you focus when you're high on meth? Yeah, you can focus like you've never been able to focus in your life. The problem is you probably can't choose what you focus on. So that's always a challenge with speed. That includes Adderall. Is yes, you have energy and enthusiasm and motivation, but whether or not you're going to direct that towards the thing that you're supposed to be directing it at is another question. You could get high on meth and spend 2 solid days playing video games. You could get high on meth, spend 2 solid days working on an important project that's not the one you're supposed to be working on. My sister's ESTP husband left an Easter party to rake the leaves of my cousin's house when he was high on meth. That's a textbook meth move. Textbook. Yeah, I was a meth addict for like 4 years back in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004. I was a meth addict. I did meth every day, you know. Part of the time I had a job, part of the time I got lit, and then eventually I got reduction in force. The county released all of its teachers that weren't fully credentialed, and but that got me unemployment for a year, and then I managed to stretch that for another year, and then it was like, okay, I can't handle this anymore. So I never had this experience. There's a lot of people who, including my friends who I was doing it with, who experienced some of the stereotypical bad things about meth. The INFP friend that was doing it with me, she picked her face a lot. She'd, sit in the bathroom and get blackheads and, go crazy with the picking her face. My friend Corey, he also didn't handle it well in the sense that he had all these sort of, cover your windows with aluminum foil, paranoia, NI shit going on. Meanwhile, I handled it pretty well. I mean, I got a lot of good work done. No, that was the meth, believe me. There's nothing wrong with her at all, except she was whacked out, and that's what she was tweaking out on, It's common that I attribute it to third slot SI. It's an absolute value, right? Whereas what did I do with my extra energy? I attained on my values, absolute values as well. FE, made a bunch of shit to show people, and NI, tried to make it good. Like, at the very beginning of doing meth, I went through a brief masturbation phase, as people who do meth typically do, Oh, I've been masturbating for 6 hours. Would you look at that? But the thing is, I got over that phase pretty quickly. And of course, the stuff I directed myself to didn't really pan out. We did have a job, I guess, of making podcasts. We were getting paid to make these podcasts, these box monitor podcast review podcasts. Only $50 an episode, but somebody hired us to do it, so that was kind of cool. Are we wrapping up already? I don't think so. So test person says, I smoked meth every day for 4 years while holding a 9-to-5 job. I was promoted twice during the time. Right. Liz never lost her job either. And Corey didn't either. Corey eventually left Earthlink, but it's like there were plenty of occasions when Corey worked from home. He was a senior executive at Earthlink. And so I got to watch conversations where it's like we'd be smoking meth and maybe working on music or something. And they'd be like, okay, I got a conference call. Shh. I'd be on this conference call and act all professional and everything. And, meanwhile, he's got like this filthy shirt on and he's all whacked out. And it's like, it's kind of weird to see. But anyway, they both kept their jobs too. I didn't lose my job because of meth either. I got laid off with everybody who didn't have the fully realized credential. Everybody who's on an emergency credential got laid off. So, am I British? No, my ancestors apparently were German. My name Strauss is a German name, meaning I think ostrich. And some people can handle it, some people can't. Let me tell you who cannot handle math. ISFPs. In general, FI people can't handle it very well because when you come down from math, there's an accompanying emotional down period. I never really noticed it. It converted directly into SI for me. So when I come down, I just want to sleep and watch TV and eat and stuff. I wouldn't feel sad. But FI people tend to feel sad when they come down from it. I guess it's brought them emotionally up, and now they recognize that that up is gone, and now they're emotionally down. But FI polar helps a lot with that. It just gets converted to SI. If I do feel emotionally down, I don't recognize it. Who needs meth for what? I don't need meth for anything. But if you're saying, do I need meth to have sex for 6 hours? I mean, even if I had meth, I would hope not to waste it by having sex for 6 hours on it. It's like, I'm pretty sure Rachel doesn't want to be humped for 6 hours. Hi there, Margaret Fargret. I mean, you change your name to famous people. I'm talking with you. Amazing. Yes, I am an alpha male. Adderall used to give you worse down periods. I mean, I always have my sleepy week every month where I catch up on lost sleep, but I try to stay on top of that sleep thing during the bottle. I'm a lot more able to do that now because I can occasionally take half a Clonny at night, and that'll help me sleep. I'm very careful about that, though. It's really easy for me to see just how great it would be for a little while to have enough benzos and speed that you can be up, all thwacked out, but chill because of the benzos, right? So that's a combination of drugs that is easily fallen into. So I'm super careful. I never take Klonopin, even though I'm only taking 1 milligram, half a Klonopin before I go to sleep. I never take it more than 1 day in a row. So at the worst, I'll take it, skip a day, and take it again. But usually it's like I'll take it. It'll be 3 or 4 days. I'll take it again because I don't want to get into another bad habit, you know. You were talking about race the other day. My theory is that the meth issue is designed to open the third eye. I think divisions are religious, not ethnic or class. That they want us all to see Satan. Who's they? Masturbating for 6 hours. Look, the thing is this. Nowadays, when I rub one out, if I'm spending more than 30 minutes on it, granted, most of the time of rubbing one out is spent opening tabs in the incognito browser window as I sift through, either Pornhub or XX videos or one of those other sites like that. And I go, this one might be good. This one might be good. This one might be good. I have a bunch of tabs open. I never make it past like the first or second tab. I always have way more porn prep for me than I ever get through, Of course, when I'm rubbing one out, I don't want it to take a long time because it's just a waste of time, Yeah, that happens too, test person. Unless you have a sleep makeup stretch, then you start normalizing the math. In other words, you're on it, so you're awake and functional, but it's not making you that very thwacked out because what any kind of amphetamine does is it takes advantage of your dopamine mechanisms to prohibit you from reuptaking it, and therefore it gets increasingly, you get a larger pool of dopamine and you start feeling more motivated or whatever. But the thing is, to get your results, you have to sleep to rebuild up your dopamine. If you don't sleep, then you can't. It's like when you're fully rested and you take speed, it causes a large amount of dopamine increase because you have plenty of dopamine to not reuptake. But when you don't get a lot of sleep, then your amount of dopamine is low because you replenish it when you're sleeping. So if you sustain being on speed for a long time without taking sleepy weeks, then it just stops working, basically. That's assuming you're taking it in a way that means you're getting less sleep than you should on a regular basis. I'm going pee, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing. It seems pretty obvious to me, though, that I always, without knowing it, wanted and needed speed. The first time I did meth, which was in my early 20s, it was shocking to me. It was, oh my God, I feel so okay. I feel like I finally, I'm free. It was weird. It was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. You know, have you ever read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? No, I did. I did, however, watch the movie. Margaret, you long ago exhausted any and all possible interest I could ever conceivably have about your type. You have gone back and forth about it for the last 3 years without stopping. So I don't give a fuck what type you are. You can be whatever type you want. Because I know that whatever type you are, in a few days, you're going to come back and say, nope, I was wrong. I'm actually an INTJ. So just knock it off, Margaret. I'm not playing along with your silly game any longer. You're like, famous people, listen. I only see fun. Whether you make it or not. Sarcasm is bad. What you should do instead is be facetious. That's nicer. Why do people call you ESTP? I mean, that's not true, Mackenzie Hoffman. ESTPs are just as smart as ENTPs. ENTPs are just more wordy. Why do people call me an ESTP? Well, I think the primary reason is because they're trying to find some way to invalidate me. Like, in other words, say, this guy shouldn't be listened to about typology. And one good way of potentially accomplishing that is to say he's even typed himself wrong. The problem with anybody trying to accuse me of typing myself wrong is, let's say let's say we were all working together right now to figure out a way to attack Eric's type and to cast doubt upon his self-typing of ENTP. Well, if you were going to do that, and you're looking around at the types and you say, okay, well, we can't accuse him of being an ISFP. That's not going to work because he talks too much. He's clearly an extrovert. I've had people attempt to accuse me of being an ISFJ. That's a popular one. That makes some sense. It's the same quadra. It's my dual. So at certain times, I do act like an ISFJ. But you have to ignore the vast majority of the data to conclude that. So I've had people then go, okay, well, he's an ESFJ. The problem with typing me as an ESFJ is I obviously have way more TI going on than any ESFJ. So you're going to be hard pressed to make that case. What's the case that potentially you could make best is ESTP, because you're acknowledging you got the 2-3 right, and you got the fact that I'm an action type right. So to the extent that people don't understand extroverted intuition very well, then that's a believable mistyping, the most believable mistyping you could try to throw out there to muddy the waters. So I guess that's why people type me as ESTP. But I wonder if any of them actually believe I'm an ESTP, because I get the fact that they're looking for a way to attack, and that's a way to attack, and that's the best. If you're going to take that way to attack, that's the best option. ESTP is better than the other possible mistypings. But I wonder if anybody actually believes it, like who genuinely says, you know what, Eric's really an ESTP, and I can't believe he still thinks he's an ENTP. Because if they do think that, I'd be curious as to what their perception of an ENTP would look like. Because if I'm not an ENTP, then I want someone to show me an ENTP, so I can see the difference between me and them and why I'm not actually one, I mean, that's a very TE kind of approach to Winston's mom, and I'm sure that's true. But the reason it confuses me is because I tend to think of it from a TI perspective. Like, well, if you were going to claim I was an ESTP, you'd have to make meow claim, a meow claim, a meow claim, and I don't see how you would be able to substantiate those when these things are running obviously afoul of it or something like that. In other words, how do you both type me as an ESTP and have an understanding of functions that is consistent at all? Yeah, I'm definitely in a box. I accept my label. I accept that I am an ENTP and am somewhat limited, like everybody, by his type, and also in some areas empowered, like everybody, by his type. I don't try to say, you can't label me. You can label me ENTP. You're welcome to. You'd be correct in labeling me such. And you'd even be correct in concluding that you can predict a lot about me based on that fact. Quit talking about your vagina, famous people. And your name's Bargret Fargret, okay? Quit trying to trick me by changing your name. I know you. You're Bargret Fargret. Okay. Vaginas are the natural chasm extending. So naturally you have a chasm between your legs. And it just extends a little further in women. Yes, Eileen. I know your name's Eileen. Eileen is probably, I'm willing to say almost for sure, the only person here who's seen my penis. Mm-hmm. I'm quite confident of that. That strange kind of smoking is ES_P ish. This kind of smoking? I'm not embarrassed. See, I think weed smoking is really more of an intuitive thing. I find that ESTPs, for example, don't really like smoking weed very much. Yes, I know I have a copy of it. All right, fine, Winston's mom. You know what? I'm going TENI today. Fuck my own words. Let's find an expert. It's time that we rely on experts to tell us what to think. Long overdue, I'd say. Where's my copy of you? I know I have it around here somewhere. Well, it was right there. I don't know. I can't find it at the moment. Octavia Silva, yes, she has. She has indeed. No, Octavia Silva is definitely not my daughter, Delilah. I totally wish that my daughter spent as much time around here as Octavia Silva. But my daughter is actually an ESTP. She's got no time for this shit. Because C.S. Joseph says you are an ESTP, also because you are an ESTP. I see. Well, Ninja Panda the Third, neither of those seem to be reasons to affirm that statement. How can change from talking out loud my thoughts to more quiet and opposite? Does this seem possible? Why would you want to? Why do you want to quiet yourself? Are you annoyed by the sound of your own voice? Octavia Silva didn't ban you. I see you right there. You're not banned. Boba Fett, 843, unbanned. I prefer Delta 8 over Delta 9, though, in the form of edible gummies. Oh, I don't make that distinction. C.S. Joseph does know his ass from a hole in the wall. He just doesn't know his ass from an ENTP. Oh, you didn't? She just blocked you. It means she doesn't want to listen to what you have to say, Boba Fett. She's an FI Dom. She doesn't need any extra. That's the thing. Nobody needs to justify blocking somebody at all. Simply the fact that they don't want to hear what you say is plenty good reason to block you. Whether you deserve it or not is entirely up to them. You know. Are you seriously smoking weed easy? It's an intuitive thing? I don't quite know what you mean by that. I see it as an intuitive thing. That's not why I smoke weed, obviously, but like Delilah doesn't like to smoke weed. She prefers drinking alcohol. But she's not a drunk like me. She's not an addict like me. I'm an addict by nature. I get addicted to things. I tweak out on shit. Even before I ever did any drugs, I was an addict. I would find non-chemical ways to change my head. I'd hyperventilate and stand up very quickly so I'd get a head rush. It's like anything to change my mental state. When I first heard about drugs and alcohol, an anti-drug classes in school, I thought, that sounds like a magic potion. I want to try that magic potion. This is evil and death and blah, blah, blah. But so interesting though. Those anti-drugs classes did nothing but get me extremely interested in drugs. Have you recovered from your encounter with Sean? At Sean Ryan Barron, I must say I was laughing my head off toward the end when you guys were totally talking past each other. Oh, did Sean Ryan Barron have a conversation with other Sean? Eric, what do you think about people who type by looks? I mean, if they're just typing for their own purposes by looks, that's fine. If they're trying to tell you you're typed meh and justifying it with, well, you look like it, that's not a justification, right? Because it relies upon your faith in the individual's correct correlations and the ability of that strategy to successfully identify a type. Did Sean talk to Sean? I am really curious about this. Did Sean have an argument with Sean? Sean Ryan Barron? If so, I hope you won that shit. All right? I hope you're not coming back here a loser. There's first place, and then there's loser. Oh, I watched the high school scene at Host Eric. Number one, your mullet rocked the short. Yeah, I have to object to that. I don't think that haircut could qualify as a mullet. I think at best you could call it a smallet. Okay, it's a very small mullet. I prefer not to have that hairdo referred to as a mullet. But that's a minor quibble on my part. Two, I've not changed at all. True, I haven't changed at all. I'm a little more fun loving now and a little less nerdy, I guess. Can I play the flute on this pipe? No, but I can smoke a pipe out of this flute. I think Sean is very careful when he talks to me. I can imagine that there might be a change in his interaction style when he's talking to somebody else. I don't know. I've noted that he seems to be careful when he's talking to me. Your substance abuse? I mean, why do you think I abuse substances? I don't feel as though I abuse substances. As somebody who has abused substances throughout the course of his life, one of the things that makes this part of my life so vastly superior is that this is a part of my life when I don't abuse substances. I use them in a sustainable way that's the right choice for me, you know? So, but I'm interested also to hear that not only am I an ESTP, but I'm an underdeveloped one. So if I were to be a developed ESTP, what would that look like? Would I have houses built upon me? I spent a fair amount of time in AA meetings. And I was very struck by the diversity of people in there, people of all kinds of people. And that's part of the issue when people are explaining their understanding of alcoholism, for example, and their stories in AA meetings is a lot of people say things that I never resonated with. A lot of people have said to me in my various capacities of dealing with drug and alcohol problems throughout my life, said things like, "You've got to find another way to kill the pain," or something like that. But I don't do drugs to kill any pain. This is why people abuse drugs. There's something deeper than them that is suffering that they need to address. That is not why I do drugs. I don't know where you guys got this idea, but who does drugs for that reason? Well, apparently a lot of people do, but not me. See, this is the other thing, 69 queued up. I have, in some sense, bucked the status quo regarding addiction in that I say my problem was alcohol, and there was a time when I had a problem with meth, but I don't do those two drugs anymore, so I've solved those problems. The contemporary notion of addiction says, well, if you are addicted to anything, you must stop doing everything, or else you'll go back to the things you won't be able to live a good life or something. But what I'm arguing is actually exactly the same thing as what Alcoholics Anonymous's big book is arguing. Alcoholics Anonymous's big book says explicitly in it that Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on any other matter besides alcoholism. And that includes other drugs. So the reason I had to leave Alcoholics Anonymous was because I had come to accept that to quit drinking, I was going to have to abdicate my own analysis role. In other words, I was going to have to stop judging and evaluating the legitimacy of the thing I was believing in, quote unquote. So the thing that made that very possible for me for quite some time is that there's really nothing in the Alcoholics Anonymous big book that I have a problem with. There really isn't anything in there that I have a problem with. It's in some sense the ideal structure for a recovery program. There are no leaders. There are no governors. There are just equal members. Come and go. There's no expectations are all social. There's no enforcement mechanisms or anything. It's based on attraction rather than promotion, and it only deals with a single issue: alcohol. Unfortunately, contemporary individuals in Alcoholics Anonymous don't listen to their own literature. And that's where I had to make a break. If they could have told me, listen, I'm behaving not in accordance with Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's why there's a problem here, I'd already come to terms with the fact that in such a circumstance, I would go along with Alcoholics Anonymous in order to be sober rather than be right. However, they're the ones who weren't going along with Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was the only one who was. They're the ones who were telling me you can't smoke weed because that's not sober. And if you're not sober, then you can't talk during meetings. It's like, you have no opinion on this issue, right? Alcoholics Anonymous? That's what it says right here. Didn't matter. So it was fine for me to subsume myself beneath the wrongness of Alcoholics Anonymous when it was wrong. It was a necessary way for me to humble myself and say, being right is not is not the same thing as being correct. So, but it's not okay for for what happened, right? So it's like I'd already decided that I would, when my notion of right disagreed with Alcoholics Anonymous's notion of right, I'd listen to them regarding matters of alcohol because it didn't matter. Only thing I needed to do was quit drinking. I would give up anything I had to do so, including my own correctness, my own rightness. However, I couldn't deal with that. The other people being wrong about AA and their wrongness about AA, winning over my rightness about AA, ignoring the larger frame of reference about whether AA is wrong or right, and they're still wrong and still insisting that their way is correct. I can't handle that. Then I've worked out a deal with myself, right? Like, you are going to not be the person who decides the status of things regarding this one issue, and you're going to defer to this specific organizational literature and its ideas and stuff like that. So then what do you do when the group of people who comprise this thing are all wrong about their own literature? And it's not like it's confusing or anything. It's cut and dry. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion about anything but alcohol. So I had to leave because at that point, they've got me double bound. I've already conceded everything I'm going to concede, which I will be wrong to Alcoholics Anonymous. You can't make me. You can't make me then like be wrong to your wrong interpretation of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's just what. So I don't know if AA is aware of this or not. People in AA, I don't think they really understand this is the case, but trying to do, AA is weird little miracle of history. It's kind of perfect. It really is kind of perfect. And I don't know if people in AA realize this, but they are shitting on something that's pretty perfect when they try to extend what it says to have mission creep. Alcoholics Anonymous is for alcoholics to quit drinking alcohol. And that's fucking it. I mean, 69 Cuda, I think people need to find a way to incorporate a healthy faith-based frame of reference into their life. And I think NA is, that's why I never went to NA. But here's the thing. NA is honest about what it says, right? It says, this is our position on addiction, that we're different from Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is only about alcohol. But we believe that addiction itself is the problem, not the drug. That's how NA and AA differ. That's why I was in AA and not in NA. So it's like, I respect Narcotics Anonymous more for being wrong and consistent than Alcoholics Anonymous for being right and everybody being a hypocrite. I mean, I was there voluntarily, so I didn't have any piss thing. It was just a matter of honesty. If the meeting started with people saying, if you've consumed anything that's changed your mental state within the last 24 hours, please don't speak. Speak to us after the meeting. And if you've consumed anything within the last 24 hours, your sober date resets. If I'm being told that all the time, I was able to, for a month or so, at the beginning of when I was quit drinking, to just sort of continue smoking weed and just blithely ignore, just basically pretend I wasn't. I don't know, just somehow not deal with that contradiction, right? Then I was sent off to China, and I didn't smoke any weed or do any kind of intoxicant at all for the duration of my time being there, because I couldn't get anything except alcohol, which I couldn't drink. So I went to a lot of AA meetings in Shanghai. Didn't run afoul of this contradiction there because I wasn't doing anything other than anything. I wasn't doing anything except smoking cigarettes, which they don't have a problem with. When I got back to Los Angeles and resumed going to my AA meetings, at that point, it became an unavoidable problem because I've got my sponsor, and the worst thing I could do, far worse than leaving AA, would be to lie about it. Like to go and say, oh yeah, this is my whatever birthday. When I come back, I tell my sponsor, I'm like, first of all, I was smoking weed until I left China. And when I got back, I thought for a second, like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to just not smoke any weed anymore. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be pure and true or whatever. And I did end up smoking weed pretty quickly after I got back. And I called my sponsor and was like, no, I smoked weed. And he was just like, well, we're going to have to reset your sober date and blah, 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 blah. And then I processed it over the next few days. I continued smoking weed, and I processed it, and I realized, it's like we had this talk before, like as a hypothetical kind of in theory, because I was in China. We talked during when I was in China or whatever, but this is a real problem. I continue to point out things like, and no, but I'm not breaking any AA rules if I smoke weed. And my sponsor is saying, yes, you are. And I win because it says so right there in our book. But it doesn't seem to matter. So I said, look, I can't do this. I can't be in AA anymore because I'm not going to stop smoking weed. I don't think that these things are relevant, and the book doesn't either, and everybody seems to be ignoring it. That's why I'm not in AA. But I got to say, I give full props, due respect, and immense gratitude to that organization for being there every time I needed them. Because that was not the first time I tried quitting drinking. I'd been in and out of AA for years, every time I go in, I get a little bit hopeful, and then I go back and drink again. And then I'd have more of a sense of, see, Eric, that's just how you are. You're a loser. You have no follow through. And then go do it again. I'd go for a couple of weeks sober, and then again I'd fail. And I'd say, I was saying these words just a week ago about how I'm going to do it. And then once again, here, fucking stupid Eric, just weak person, I guess, just a weak, useless, worthless person. And go about my business, trying to hide my drinking as much as I could, and being very successful with that generally, and but never feeling confident that I was successful at it. Garnering more and more success professionally, but always having the same experience when I try to quit drinking. Once again, hope, commitment, resolve, words that I'd say that I expect myself to adhere to my words, and then I'd drink again. I'd just be like, fuck, I've got to stop going to AA because it's worse. It's so much worse than just persisting in a state of despair to have hope and have it crushed again. Of course, I'm the one doing it. it's not like this is happening to me, right? So at the end, when I finally did successfully quit drinking, it was because I had made that decision that I abdicate all the responsibility for being correct about something regarding this issue to those people. Doesn't matter how much I think meh, or know meh, or recognize a bad argument meh, I'm going to play evil amoral attorney here. I'm going to always argue, find the way to argue that what I'm being told is the best thing and the best argument. And even if I can't convince myself of that, I'll recognize that the one argument that subsumes all others here is obey. Eric, you will go there and you will obey those people. You will obey them and internalize their narratives and accept them as true. And you will argue hard in favor of them. You will figure out a way to make them true. You will stop evaluating them dispassionately. You will evaluate them from an interested calculus in which you definitely have a horse in this race and you want them to be right. I mean, the thing is, that took me 20 years of struggling with alcohol to get to the idea that, fuck it. I'm going to argue not in favor of what's most correct or right or sustainable or whatever, but instead on what's good for me. I'm going to pretend that what's good for me is right, and I'm going to argue it as hard as I can. So I did, and it worked. But it also meant things like, well, he told me to pray, so I'm going to pray. No, he didn't tell me what to believe. And that was a key factor here is I think he was the first person who made me understand, I'm telling you to pray. I'm not telling you to believe anything. And it's like, oh, eventually that grew into my understanding of my whole set of argumentation regarding faith being a behavior, not a collection of beliefs. Lauren Cuthbert, to a certain extent, I have to put blinders on. There's so many things going on in the world right now that make me so angry that if I don't put blinders on, I'll never accomplish anything that will help. I'm looking to fix this thing at the top level frame so it'll cascade down and actually address the shit forever, rather than addressing things one at a time. The world is forsaking the most significant values that sustain a civil society, namely free expression and individual autonomy. And it's doing so in the name of fighting against the bad guys who are very ill-defined. Like, look, in the United States, we have long enjoyed and acted as though it were a real thing, the right to free assembly. In Los Angeles, anyway, and all across the country, frankly, that right to free assembly has been suspended since the World Health Organization catastrophized what's basically just another cold flu virus. It's a new one to which people had no immunity. It was kind of a bad one. It swept across the world. Probably most everybody's been affected by it, but I'm quite confident I've had it. The right to free assembly has been suspended now for a solid year, and it's not been discussed as a matter of concern regarding these policy issues. So where have all the arguments been? Where have all the arguments been about rights? There haven't been any. So it's like all the arguments have been about, is COVID real? Was it manufactured in a lab? Should we, are masks actually help or not? In other words, everything concedes the frame, which is the problem. No arguments are being made that challenge the frame. So let's say you were, Gen Xio, that person, Lauren Cuthbert, doesn't live in America. She lives in Britain, and she's talking about British law, not an American law. So the thing is, the right to free assembly is not the right to free protest. The right to free assembly is the right to free assembly. So preventing people from going to a basketball game is no different than breaking up people who are peacefully and lawfully protesting. It's exactly the same rights violation. It's not a rights violation because they were protesting. It's a rights violation because they were peacefully assembling. And I can think of hardly any more peaceful assembly than a bunch of people watching a basketball game. Right. So in the status quo, we don't have examples of people challenging the frame well is the problem. So in the status quo, the loudest voices challenging the frame are those making the worst arguments. Who are the loudest voices who are anti-COVID? They're the people who are saying this is a Bill Gates conspiracy, or this is the Illuminati, or other shit like that, Okay, well, fine. The NBA shut themselves down before the state did. I agree. But I tell you who didn't shut themselves down before the state did. My local Cocos. Yet we can't assemble there either. Can't assemble there and eat meal. So even if you think that some of the assemblies that one might choose to go to are voluntarily and independently shutting down of their own accord, there are plenty of examples of instances where they're not. So the fact that this huge issue of a basic constitutional right to free assembly, being suspended indefinitely because of a cold virus or a flu virus or a new variant of a cold flu virus, is a question that needs to at least be addressed. In other words, I'm not saying the right to free assembly is absolute. And I'm not saying that there might not be a circumstance in which the kind of response we had to COVID is appropriate. I'm saying this is not that circumstance. So we can imagine something that did have a 20% fatality rate, affected people of all ages equally, and even if you survived it, it left you in a state like polio, for example. We can imagine what would happen if polio were going around. Did we lock the country down when polio was going around, even though the harms of it were vastly greater than anything anybody's ever suffered from COVID? No. So we ask ourselves, were we barbarically wrong back then? Or is that just part of being a species that exists partially as animals who are not invulnerable to things like diseases? You can think of everything that we made a vaccine for, okay? At any point, okay, Boba Fett says it wasn't airborne and fomite transmissible. Okay, so, but the flu is, right? I don't know what fomite transmissible is, but presumably the flu is. And you say, well, but what? Like, the point is, can we establish some kind of standard? Oh, the virus is tough to kill even alive, apparently, polio. Oh. Okay. So how is it transmissible? Just by regardless, the point is we may not be able to find an exact equivalent, right, to COVID. So it's true we can't find an exact equivalent, but we can look at a lot of instances with some elements of similarity and see where we are in proportion with that or not. No, I get that now. I got it now, Boba Fett. Thank you. I appreciate it. The thing about that, the polio issue is, so you'll note that there was no, during the time of polio, there was no lockdown. Now you might say, well, it wasn't airborne. Okay, but people still touch stuff when they go around the world, right? So the point is, we do have comparable instances to look at. And we have an instance before where there were some lockdowns, which was the Spanish flu, right? The Spanish flu was much more deadly than COVID. And also, the virus functioned in a way that made it much more feasible to eliminate this outbreak with quarantines. We were all informed at the beginning of all the information we needed to know to conclude that quarantines weren't going to work with COVID. That definitely quarantines weren't going to work. That definitely lockdowns weren't going to work. And they haven't. The reason being, they told us right at the beginning about the long incubation period and highly easy contagiousness of the disease, and the fact that nobody had any immunity to it. And by the time they told us this, it was already loose. So we could all reasonably conclude at this point that even if we were to do lockdowns, we would that would be an unsuccessful way to stop the spread of the disease. That you would no doubt have localities that were sufficiently isolated that stayed free of the disease. And for those localities where none of the disease occurred, if they wished to lock down, in other words, lock themselves separated from the rest of the world, not locked down within their community, that might make sense. But this conversation was never had, right? Nobody ever had this conversation. I mean, I did. I said this right away. I said all this stuff right away, you know. But in 2015, there was a pandemic plan published. Say that 3 times. Host Eric was correct that everyone overreacted and reacted incorrectly. If the administration had trusted and followed this plan, and here's the thing, Jaxiel, and I'm so glad you brought up Italy, because Italy is a great example and proof of how the alarmist reaction was horribly overblown. All we have to do is go back 5 years to find a flu season that killed just as many people in Italy as this COVID season did. Just 5 years ago, a flu season killed just as many people. and barely made the news. Interesting, huh? So it's like, you know, you really have to, sometimes when you look into things like this directly, it's incredibly surprising. Like, I was really surprised to discover that only 1 in 320 smokers get lung cancer. Because the way the data is being presented to everybody, you'd never guess that, right? Who would guess that that's the actual stat on the thing? I would have thought it was much higher than that. When I looked into it, no, actually, it's 1 in every 320. So basically, Italy had a big pile of oily rags and hay and brought a match, lit that pile of oily rags and hay on fire, made a big fire, and said, wow, that must have been started by a flamethrower. That's what happened. And what Scott Steiner here says is critically important as well. Have these lockdowns worked? Well, the Dakotas didn't lock down and have a low COVID rate, while New York locked down and had the highest COVID rate. So what I'm saying is correct. The nature of this virus makes it such that the spread of it's inevitable in populated areas, regardless of what countermeasures you take, assuming you allow people to do the basic things they need to do to live. Here's what Los Angeles's or California's COVID plans did. They created a few places that were very crowded. Those places that were considered able to be open because of arbitrary reasons. So, like Ulta, for example. Not that long ago, Ray Stein went into Ulta. That place was jammed with ladies brushing past each other, brushing up against each other, blah, 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 blah. Everybody had a mask on. But whether or not it was covering their nose, it depended on the individual. It was all covering their mouth, right? Of course, all of that theater is rendered completely worthless by one person in there having COVID and sneezing or something. And then if they're one of the people who doesn't have it over their nose, they say you're 6 times less likely to get COVID if both people have masks on. So it's still possible to get it with both people have masks on. So if, let's say, a few people in that Ulta had COVID, everybody in that Ulta is going to have it. It's unavoidable. And take the reverse of Florida and Vermont. Florida locked down, then reopened very quickly and had a moderate rate. Vermont locked down really late and still has a low COVID rate. And of course, the disingenuous rhetoric about COVID from the get-go has been this saving lives thing. Stay home saves lives. How many lives did I save today, I wonder, by staying home? There's also a fundamental failure to recognize kinds of impacts and their measurability. So there's an inherent belief or underlying claim in the COVID alarmist camp that says whatever efforts we do are good because they're going to save at least some lives. Well, of course, how many lives people are saving by doing all this COVID stuff is very speculative. After all, a lot of people have still died. But we're being told 2 contradictory stories, right? One, that we're saving lives and saving the world by doing all this nonsense. And 2, that we just crossed the barrier of 500,000 Americans dead by COVID. So originally we were told we need to briefly lock down to flatten the curve. right? But if you look at the data, there's no flattened curve there at all. If you actually look at the data of hospitalizations and hospital capacity, hospitals went below capacity most places during this COVID thing. It's not a hoax, though. That's the thing, Boba Fett, and that's what the COVID alarmists love. COVID alarmists love it when Boba Fett says it's a hoax because they can pick on that argument. That's a terrible argument, and this is the kind of crazy people who oppose COVID protections. People who think it's a hoax. It's not a hoax. It's a textbook example of what happens when there are no meta-analysts in the room and some analysts who are locked into their own frame of reference, which is virology or something, at the World Health Organization, get a hold of the mic, and then a bunch of people who are looking for an opportunity to jump at something where the anti-science people can be shit on, right? They all jump on this one, and all of a sudden, before you know it, mass hysteria, it's mass hypnosis is what it is. Mass hypnosis. And the reason why that we continue to not hear any good words in the news about the issue at all, is because my voice isn't loud enough. My words win. My words make smart people ashamed of themselves when they are in favor of catastrophizing this thing. Boba Fett's words make more anger, more conflict. Because if you push against their wrongness with other wrongness, their wrongness has all the momentum and you have nothing to contradict it. You have to choose your words carefully. It's not harmless. It does kill people. Let's assess things accurately and then make a good decision about how to respond. We have to count all of the impacts. If you are advocating shutting someone's business down, you need to first calculate all the impacts to them rather than simply dismiss it with a wave of the hand. We have to determine which of the impacts we've calculated as likely are certain, like that business will lose money, which are speculative, like we're going to save lives, and which are double speculative, like we're going to save this many lives. And so if we are going to talk about the fact that lives need to be saved, then we look to comparables. And we apply reciprocal burdens. If the reasoning being used here is correct, then it's also the case that we need to prevent all single people, not in long-term relationships, from having sexual intercourse until we get vaccines for all sexually transmitted diseases. It's also the case that we need to prevent anybody from driving until we successfully eliminate all fatalities on the road. All right, so Harshita Joshi is absolutely correct. Most of the people who have died from COVID, quote unquote, had multiple pre-existing conditions that were contributing factors to their death. In fact, if you look at the stats on Italy specifically, like 90% of the deaths were over 80 and with multiple pre-existing conditions. So, I mean, it's weird. But the other thing is, when I said right away, and even right away, I seem to not get anybody go, oh, yeah, you're right. People just sort of withheld judgment. But I said right away, look, obviously, they say there's 4% fatality. Obviously,
if you're only testing the people who are sick enough to go into the hospital, your fatality rate is going to be hugely exaggerated, especially when we know the other factors of this disease, that it's so contagious, everybody gets it. If you're right about what you're telling us about this virus, then anybody who thinks at all will recognize the fact that your testing and data gathering methodologies are going to falsely exaggerate the fatality rate by an exponential factor. So they said 4% of people die. It's considerably less than 0.4%. It's like probably close to 0.2%. It's not any more deadly than the average flu virus. Now, granted, it has the capacity to kill a lot more people because it's more infectious, and its infection platform is more successful than the flu's. In other words, it has a longer incubation period. So there's no doubt that, in fact, COVID does kill people. But the thing is, the world has acted as though it discovered something that kills people for the first time. You know, I mean, isn't it fair to say that? The world has reacted as though it has discovered something that kills people for the first time. Hold on a second. You know how heretofore none of us have died of anything? That's about to change. I also said right at the beginning, I said, if we were going to have a pandemic and we wanted to tailor it to be the ideal pandemic, this is what it would look like. It would take out the people who were near death anyway. It would affect the young not at all. And most people would have almost no effects from it. And those who did get it would have some problems. But it's like you could barely tailor a more ideal pandemic than this one for the world to have to go through. But the point is, the world has to go through it. We pretended like we don't have to go through it. Let it run its course. That's the answer. Put the onus where it belongs, on the people who want to take extra precautions to prevent themselves from getting it. Nobody's stopping anybody from wearing 50 fucking masks when they leave the house. Why does the onus have to be on everybody rather than on those people? Why not respect the fact that different people have different perspectives on this and allow those who think it's terrifying to isolate themselves as much as they want? Why do we have to control and prevent everybody else from getting a disease based upon its most catastrophic interpretation, rather than allowing for the fact that individuals can be wrong, can choose to be wrong? Everybody needs to read The Giver. You know, Lois Lowry's The Giver. I used to teach it to fifth graders. It's a book about the society that takes away everybody's choices to keep everybody safe. And then, of course, to maintain this perfectly balanced society, they do have to kill quite a few people. But like, there's this quote, you know, but people choosing their own spouses? I mean, what if they chose wrong? And their own jobs? I mean, that would create a disaster. We couldn't possibly have that. The Giver sucks. Why would you say that? I like that book. It makes it clear that those who sacrifice liberty for security end up with neither. I didn't read the third book. I didn't even know there was a second book. What war? I don't FB or IF. You don't finger bang or irritate figs. Okay, listen, everybody. Winston's mom neither finger bangs nor irritates figs, so don't ask her to do either, please. What made you cry? The giver? I'm going to prevent this hypothetical war, 69 Cuda. I'm going to walk right up to whoever the main guy of China is, chairman, whatever. Forget his name. Anyway, I'm gonna walk right up. I'll pull down my pants. I'm gonna hold my dick like this and say, "Suck it." It's called Diplomacy 101. In an odd change of strategy today, United States President Eric Strauss whipped out his dick and said, "Suck it," to Chinese Premier Lao Chi Chu Chao Chi, whatever his name is. There are 3 of them? I didn't know that. I had no idea there were 3 of them. Boy, those dystopian societies. You just like, can you imagine a world so crazy where everybody gets locked in their house because there's a cold going around? That'll never happen. Oh yeah, I'm definitely running. Palmalot, I guess, will be surprised, but it's just things take time. It's like things take a long time. I don't spend the majority of my time working on the things that are work, which is unfortunate. But as long as I keep moving forward a little bit at a time, we'll make good progress. I actually plan my current plan on. Rachel and I are going down to the desert tomorrow to stay in the condo with my dad for a couple of days, and I want us to make a bunch of basically practice attempts at the triad, the 3 sections of the compatibility videos that we're going to make. And for me, I get to NI the hard way, the brute force way. So it's like, if we practice doing a video like 10 times or something, by the end of that practice, I'll have a much clearer idea of how I want this thing to go than at the beginning. Rachel mostly will provide like correction / she mostly just Rachel communicates a lot to me without saying anything. She's quick to communicate when she's happy about something, when it's a good idea, and she's slow to communicate about something when it's a bad idea. And that's a very reliable heuristic for me to use to access NI that I don't have to use myself, And of course, I always want to look good in Rachel's eyes, so I don't want to be like, and here, but that's not done yet. I mean, don't look at it yet. I meant it's not quite done. I'm still fixing these problems that I now recognize. So just that's how Rachel helps me make things. Look, I mean, don't look yet. Just read her face. Royals have a right to be racist. They do. Everybody does. The idea that people don't have a right to be racist is to suggest that individuals' mental states, conscience, inside ontology ought to be policed. As president, I'll strive to repeal the NFA. What's NFA? No fucking assholes. House Bill 11243A, commonly referred to as NFA, or the No Fucking Assholes Bill, which makes it a federal crime to be a fucking asshole. The way I know you aren't an ENTP is by the amazing polls you post. Alex, I just want to thank you for bringing up my polls, and even if you mean it sarcastically, ESTP, okay, that makes more sense, yeah. Well, it could have been, I thought you were being ironic, really. So, what is the National Firearms Act? What does it do? I mean, here's the thing. Here's the reality about gun legislation. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything. People still get shot. There are still mass shootings, right? Driving solo on a highway, all masked up. I've seen that so many times. It's like this person driving in their car by themselves, with their windows rolled up, and they have a mask on. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? You're not thinking. Or it could be they just have no SI, because it has been the case that I've gotten back into the car and left my mask on for a couple minutes before I realized, I'm like, oh yeah, I still got this fucking mask on. It's like, so, and Rachel does too. Rachel does the same thing. She'll get back in the car and be talking to me, and I'll say, take off your mask. Right. So the thing is about that, Scott Steiner, I agree with you that the law is bad. But the reason the law is bad is because, like I said, it's very much like COVID. We're trying to control something that we just can't control. Every time you have gun legislation, it primarily impacts people who don't need to be impacted at all by gun legislation, and at least impacts those who do. So the fact is, we've had, I don't know how many gun laws on the books in the federal statute. It's quite a few though, and there's this ongoing desire to add more gun laws, and yet as we've added more gun laws, we've seen an increase in mass shootings. Now, that doesn't say that more gun laws cause mass shootings. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying they clearly don't prevent them, right? Yeah, guns aren't even a big killer. We're talking about 11,000 deaths a year. 700,000 people last year worldwide died of AIDS, despite the fact that there exist drugs that will basically suppress the AIDS and keep you alive for indefinitely. My friend Corey's dad is one such patient. He has HIV/AIDS, but he takes this cocktail of drugs that suppresses it. Nevertheless, 700,000 people last year died of AIDS worldwide. If, in fact, the reasoning behind our COVID protocols is correct, then we should somehow prevent single people from having sexual intercourse until there's a vaccine for AIDS. After all, AIDS has a fatality rate that's very high unless you take a very expensive cocktail of drugs to keep you alive. Okay, well, I'm not talking about statistics on mass shootings. I'm talking about the ones that we've all heard the news reports about, the Vegas concert. The Vegas concert was close enough that that Kimberly saw an interview, knew one of the people who was being interviewed about having been at that show on TV one time. They were interviewing this lady who had been to the Vegas show, and Kimberly knew that lady and knew she was a fan of that music and stuff. And so that one was close enough to home that you see even in LA sometimes Vegas strong or whatever, those kind of things. I don't know if we have the full story on it or not, but I do know that it occurred. It definitely occurred. So it's an interesting, that was a very interesting case, because the story that we've been told on it anyway, and I'm not somebody who, as a general rule, doubts the narrative that's being told about stuff in the news. However, I'm also somebody who's aware when things seem to add up odd. So that one definitely seemed to add up odd. I only ever read one explanation that made sense as to why that guy did that. And the explanation that I read that made sense was he was trying to push people towards stricter gun legislation. That's the only explanation I've heard that made sense. It's like the only reason he might have to do that would be because he wanted to promote stronger legislation against guns. Of course, he took full advantage of the lack of legislation against gun owners in Nevada and stuff. The deal is, I don't think any reasonable person thinks that it's a good idea to. I think most reasonable people, let me change my approach on this. I think most reasonable people agree that the state has a reasonable interest in precluding people from gathering arsenals. So, individual citizens ought not possess military-grade weaponry because modern military is not a militia. And we don't need to rely on our local community members to protect our national sovereignty. We have a military to do that. The whole idea of there being a state is that the state has a monopoly on use of force. Now, it doesn't have a monopoly on the capacity, on just use of force, mostly with some exceptions. It doesn't have a monopoly on the capacity to use force. So, but the point is, it's not an absolute right. And when we totalize anything, we end up with totalitarianism. I don't think it's a good idea for us to perceive gun ownership as an absolute right. It is, in fact, the case that if we had an entirely free market approach to weaponry, that if somebody did wish to attack America, their best approach would be to gain residency here and accumulate an arsenal. So we don't want to enable that by doing nothing. And I do think that there are compelling societal interests in seeing to it that individuals possess no more than a reasonable amount of firepower. And this is pretty easy to justify, okay? Because look, I want you to imagine the following thing. Let's say you live in a fairly unpopulated area. You got an acre, your neighbor's got an acre. And you notice over the course of the next over the course of a few months that your neighbor is accumulating military weapons. He's got tanks, he's got a fighter plane, he's got bombs to drop, he's got a bombing plane, he's got He's got like rollable artillery. He's got machine guns. And then you start to notice that he's starting to have increasingly large gatherings of people coming over. Okay. The point is, if I were the neighbor, but it doesn't work that way. That logic doesn't apply that way. See, you have to be careful. You have to be careful. What I'm suggesting right now is a scenario that reveals that individuals are like nation states. What if Canada were lining up a bunch of tanks and guns and planes and soldiers on our borders? Wouldn't we think maybe they're about to invade us? So, in other words, arming myself to the teeth indicates I'm getting ready to go to war, whether or not I am or not. Okay, so even if I'm not planning to go to war, arming myself as though I am indicates to everybody around me that I'm planning to go to war. It makes for a very tense sort of environment, right? A civil society is defined as that in which one might need to protect oneself, might need to protect one's family, but doesn't need to overthrow any governing body. So if you are armed in order to be prepared to overthrow some governing body, you have more armory than you need. After all, the state has the monopoly on use of armed forces for sure, and just use of force amongst civilians as well. Okay, well then that's fine. I mean, the thing is, what qualifies as too big of an arsenal? That's what I'm saying. It's not an absolute right. We're going to have to use discretion there. Some things we can solve with rules, like it's absolutely wrong to maim toddlers in order to harvest their young spleens, which you then use to make a salad dressing. Okay, that's a rule. It's never okay to do that, right? And there's no mitigating factors to consider. There's no need to qualify or find some middle ground because it's a binary. You either violate someone's bodily integrity rights or you don't. Now, possession of things, ownership of things is somewhat different than that. I'm not saying we should embrace a general rule that doesn't embrace the notion of property rights. Certainly, a person who owns things has the right to the thing that they own. Certainly, people have the right to acquire things that they want. And it's also the case that in the status quo, we have available to anyone, easily acquirable, the following two things: lighters and gasoline. So let's not fool ourselves about how safe we can be by precluding people from acquiring this, that, or the other thing. Nevertheless, the state does have a compelling interest in limiting the extent to which people can gather up huge arsenals of weapons. There are individuals who fundamentally can't be trusted not to do something crazy and stupid. So when I let Courtney, an ESFP, be a channel manager briefly, back in the day, I was like letting anybody be a channel manager. I had very, very low security. One day she got pissed at me and deleted a bunch of my videos. Okay. People do have the capacity to to be ESFPs. You don't want a heavily armed ESFP because they get mad all of a sudden. They act impulsively on their anger. They embrace no kinds of universal constraints morally, and they might just blow up the whole city out of spite and then go, "I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll never do that again." And be really, really honest and earnest about that. And then do it again. I mean, for anybody who opposes all gun laws, I have 4 letters for you. ESFP. Although I would guess that probably ESFPs do most of their harm with words. It's like, if you want to protect society, make it illegal for ESFPs to use words. Right. Anyone's capable of revenge, vengeance, or freak out moment, or whatever. It's a good idea that, and also I would say, somebody who would like to acquire a ton of rocket-propelled grenade launchers, tanks, bombs, machine guns, and so forth, I would guess the correlation between wanting all that crap and chance of having freak out moment is fairly high compared to not wanting all that crap and chance of freak out moment. But let's say it's even equal. Chance of freak out moment is equal. I don't want the guy next door to me to, when he gets into a big fight with his wife, instead of slamming the car door hard and making a lot of noise and yelling, he lights a stick of dynamite. That's going to affect me too, right? I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to have dynamite. I'm just saying the more explosive power a person has, the greater the harm when and if they are susceptible to the basic human reality that sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes people do something stupid. When you do something stupid, you hope it's something small. If you're armed to the teeth, it might be something big. So I don't generally agree with gun legislation. I certainly won't sign any new gun legislation. If there was repeal of existing gun legislation across my desk, I almost certainly would sign it. But that's simply because I don't think it does what it's supposed to do. And it does a bunch of other shit that's useless and small, an accumulation of small harms that's not any good. No, I agree with you, Legends Fall. I'm not saying I would sign new gun legislation. I'm not saying I wouldn't sign gun legislation repeals. I'm saying I'm not going to advocate on this issue as president. I'm not going to go and say one of my primary goals here as president is to get existing gun legislation repealed. That's just not where I want to spend my political capital. I mean, it's absolutely not the case at all, Scott Steiner. Drugs don't make people do bad things at all. Okay? The drug that is most likely to convert from harm to yourself into harm to others is alcohol, the legal one. All my worst decisions on drugs were done on alcohol, not on meth, not on mushrooms, not on acid, not on cocaine, not on, I didn't do those downer things really. But as far as fentanyl goes and shit like that, people are likely to kill themselves using those things. That's very, very different than killing everybody else. Right? They're likely to accidentally kill themselves. That's more of a product liability thing than anything else. It's not, there's no compelling societal interest of the same sort. I mean, the thing is, up to place 48, we don't need any less gun control than we already have in order to accomplish that. In other words, anybody in America right now can still, who's not a felon, or with some exceptions, but most any adult in America right now can easily enough purchase a gun and keep it at their house and have a gun at home. In California, it's hard to carry your gun anywhere. It's like you can't really. I mean, there's laws like no concealed carry, and you have to have your gun like dismantled when you're traveling between your place and where you're going to go hunting or something. I don't know. I don't. We do have a gun here, but I don't use it ever. I'm not a hunter. It's a .22 rifle bolt action, so it's not like I have very little firepower, but there is a gun here. So the thing is, I'm much more concerned about getting drug laws repealed and or invalidated by case law than gun laws, because the thing is, both put people unjustly in jail, but drug laws put way more people unjustly in jail than gun laws. And the kind of gun laws that put people unjustly in jail are state laws. And so the only way that I would have any impact on that really would be to try to get the courts to invalidate those state laws under constitutional grounds. But the Supreme Court's already made a very clear ruling about gun laws and where the limit lies. They've been unusually clear about it, which is nice. They made clear that there is an unassailable individual right to own a handgun. I mean, like, see, this is something that I think is a little bit annoying, but I get it too. Like, it would not be a bad thing if there were a few people in the community who enjoyed hunting peacocks. We have a lot of peacocks around here, okay? And there's laws here that say you cannot molest them, which means not only can't you shoot them, but you're not supposed to feed them or like touch them or shoo them away even, right? You're not supposed to molest them. And when it comes to animals in the law, when they say like don't molest the wildlife, that's what they mean. It's like it's weird that legally that word has a specific meaning regarding animals, and in every other use it means something very different, right? But yeah, there are anti-peacock molestation laws. So but on the other hand, what if instead of a few people in the neighborhood who like to hunt peacocks and do it with, let's say, because I don't really want gunfire in the neighborhood, bullets flying around. This is a residential suburban neighborhood. I would suggest that they hunt the peacocks with a crossbow instead. So let's say a few people start hunting peacocks with a crossbow, and let's say they're great hunters and they only hunt one peacock to eat, and for a special occasion they hunt a peacock just for Thanksgiving dinner or something. Well, that's all well and good, and then that's fine. But what if it starts getting really popular, and then you get a lot of people who start hunting peacocks just for the hell of it, just to shoot them and leave the carcass right there? Well, that's why we end up having these kind of laws, right? Is if it's totally unregulated, then it's highly likely some group of teenage boys will decide it'd be fun to go shoot a bunch of peacocks. So it's a tricky business, It's like trying to figure out how to manage all these things is how we ended up where we are now. And everybody loves to view things as very black and white. Like, society currently is a mess. We need to tear it down and start over. Or, the society currently is a mess. We need to continue changing into a new society at an impossibly fast rate that is inconsistent with reality. You got two camps here, and they're both, they're both nuts. The actual truth is we've made huge mountains out of molehills for a while now, and that's the problem. It's like purportedly we're a country almost at war with itself, except there's no actual division. In other words, if I go to Alabama and stay in a hotel and eat some food at some restaurants and stuff, at no point do I encounter any any manifestation of America that is antagonistic to me. That's true for every American traveling all over America. People live basically the same way here as they do there, as they do there, as they do there. When we had an actual division in the country during the Civil War, it was over the issue of slavery. It was specifically over the issue of slave and free states. Namely, the South wanted to understand the thing as a political issue, namely to say, we have to keep a balance between slave states and free states so that we can so that we can sustain this false unity. And the reason it was a false unity is because the issue of slavery was a real issue. The North, by and large, wanted to treat it as a human rights issue of some sort, some variant of that. And the South wanted to treat it as a political issue, namely two different economic mechanisms, both of which needed to be sustained for the health of the country. It's an unreconcilable difference. It's unreconcilable because the South was running a society that was brazenly afoul of the principles on which the society was founded. And that creates cognitive dissonance. You know, it's like when you legitimately don't have any moral high ground, shit gets down to a war. But if you continue to maintain your position, if moral high ground matters at all, then we should be able to easily enough to avoid war. In this circumstance, neither side has the moral high ground. I have all the moral high ground. Everybody who's a blamer has less moral high ground than I do. So the thing is, I should both win the arguments and therefore not avoid the divisiveness. The divisiveness here is manufactured. It's not real. There's no real divide between Americans. It's all bullshit. That doesn't mean there's not real difference between people's political opinions. It means that people are the same. They're expressing agendas, not actual policy considerations. Adam Schiff. Janexiel asks, who's my congressperson? Adam Schiff. Oh. I guess Adam Schiff lost last time. It must be Judy Chu now. We were Adam Schiff for quite some time. It's appropriate we have a Chinese person representing us. I'd say probably the majority of the population around in this area is Chinese. So it makes sense that what happened. I mean, I wrote him one time. I wrote my congressman one time and said, and with some anti-drug war stuff, but I just got like what you'd call a form letter response, I guess. Am I a pencil neck? Yeah, I'm a pencil neck. Why is it that having a thick neck is more desirable? Is it because it's less likely to break? This is Rebay. Yes, I'm a fighting frog, or we used to be. So was my daughter. She was also a fighting frog. We were both Rebay fighting frogs. All right, Lauren Cuthbert. I'm going to restore your faith in humanity right now. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who will make a better day. So just start giving. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, 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 meow. There. Do you feel better? Well, you know what? Let me give you this song. I think maybe this is a better one for you. Everybody needs a little time away, just for a day, from the ones that they love. Hold me now. I never want to say I'm sorry. You can meow, 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 meow. Hold me now. I never want to say I'm sorry. I just want to let you down. After all we've been chatting through, I didn't. When in doubt, put on some Peter Cetera. You really can't go wrong with Peter Cetera. You know why? Because it's true. We really did do it all for the glory of love. The algos listen. Oh, I don't doubt that I'll get a thing that says you can't earn any money off this video because you covered these songs. But that's not a strike, so it's fine. When I play covers, the algorithm says we've identified this song by its melody, and all revenues go to that artist. I say, okay, well, whatever. I mean, it obviously doesn't stop me from doing it. So I guess I don't care about the money very much. I do worry about getting strikes or getting in trouble, right? I definitely worry about getting in trouble. But I've learned that covers won't get you in trouble. They'll just get you get your money taken away. What other healing songs do we have for you today? All right. Here's a perfect example of a healing song. Let's look at the words here. Here's a little song I wrote. You start to sing it note for note. Don't worry. Be happy. That's all I'm going to sing about it because it's kind of a dorky song. How about, what's another good song to make you feel happy? Oh, I know, right. All right. Got a guitar. And this is really going to solve everybody's ontological crisis, okay? No ontological crises will be permitted after this. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing is gonna be all right. Singing, don't worry about a thing, because every little thing is gonna be all right. Rise up this morning with the rising sun. 3 little birds beside my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melodies pure and full, saying, this is my message to you. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be all right. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Rise up this morning and smile with the rising sun. 3 little birds beside my doorstep, singing sweet songs of melodies pure and full, saying, this is my message to you. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. 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 Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. 3 little birds beside my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melodies pure and true, saying, this is my message to you. Thanks, everybody, for your positive regard. I appreciate it. Note, of course, we're down to 11 people. Eric starts singing, and down go the numbers. Anyway, what a long live stream. We've only got 13 minutes left. I'm going to try to end this right around 3 hours, okay? Just me singing along. Oh, you mean on your end, I see. I had trouble getting the melody of the verse at first. I can remember how it went into the verse, but by the last verse, I'd gotten it down. It's been a while since I listened to Bob Marley, you know. It's kind of a college band. Everybody listens to Bob Marley in college. They have Bob Marley posters. I never had any Bob Marley posters, but it's not like I didn't put on Bob Marley very much, but it got played a lot in the dorms. You know, you heard a lot of Bob Marley. You heard a lot of Bob Marley in the dorms at Santa Cruz. I mean, the little extra thing at the end to make it clear that I'm ending. Whatever that is, there a name for that in music? That little extra repeat thing that goes down a little bit to make it show that you're ending it. There's probably a name for that. I don't know. Sean Ryan Barron is an actual musician who knows all about music and stuff. So, in case you're wondering why I'm asking him, he's a super good piano player. Like, oh shit, dude, you play piano like a boss. Whenever I encounter real musicians, I'm reminded of the fact that I'm trying to be a real songwriter, but I'll probably never be a real musician. Like, you know, my clients who play for the LA Philharmonic, right? I can't imagine approaching music like that, where these people have to. I said, do you know what that thing at the end is called? When you add a thing at the end to show that you're ending it, like, you know how I repeated the last thing, but I went down to the E and then back up, like to show this is coming to the end now and the end. Is there a thing? Is that called something in music? That little thing, the extra repeat thing at the end. 15 minutes. 15 minutes is too long. Why would anybody play a song for 15 minutes? What is it, a symphony? Why the arbitrary time constraint? Because I don't like to. This is like, I'm sure you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. When you like sat in front of the computer for a long ass time, and then it's like when you sat down it was like morning, and then you get up and it's like 4 in the afternoon, and you're like, what the fuck? What happened to the day, you know? Tag ending in some contemporary styles. Codetta. It's a codetta. Yeah, so, and, you know, being an intuitive means, in general, losing yourself in moments that don't require your physical experiential engagement. And this is exactly that kind of environment for me. It allows me to engage entirely in my comfort zone, which is talking, being the action deliberation type. And it's perfectly set up for me like that, in the sense that I get to talk to lots of different people, but they don't actually get to talk in the audio space. So it's like holding court, right? What does every ENTP ultimately want to do in life? Spend the day holding court. It makes me embarrassed, frankly, to be an ENTP when I think about it a little bit, because I don't know if you've ever, you know, the guy who played the dwarf in Lord of the Rings. Oh, trust me, don't tell the elf though. That guy, you know, the guy who played the dwarf in Lord of the Rings. I don't remember where it was I saw it or whatever, but it was basically like him behaving as he normally does in life, and like holding court at like a dinner party or something. I just thought, I really got to make sure I'm not like that, to the extent that I can be. It made me just, I guess that's just being like a successful actor or something. I don't know why, but the puffery is just, it really made me kind of sad for him. It seemed to lack self-awareness. Like because he's, I guess maybe he's been in a lot. I don't know if he had a long career before that or not, but he definitely wanted to be the center of attention, and sort of operated under the assumption that everybody was going to be super interested in his. He's sort of a Bill Walton-y kind of a guy, but much shorter. I guess that's ESTJ. I don't want to be an ESTJ in that regard. Like that FE oblivious, but I probably never will be that FE oblivious. Is this like therapy? No, this is not like therapy. This is like smoking weed. It's something I do and enjoy, and sometimes have to have a little bit of self-discipline about it, you know. I don't really ever have to have self-discipline about weed, but I do about this. It's something that's fun for me. I enjoy it. It's the thing I do instead of starting my day, before I start my day, right? Like, well, I do have things to do today, but oh good, I woke up kind of early today. I could live stream for a couple hours first before I actually get started. Well, now keep in mind, I said 3 hours. Whether or not I actually adhere to that arbitrary time limit is very, very much yet to be seen. The closer I get to the arbitrary time limit, the more I feel like, okay, I'm going to need another 15. Just because I don't like being, like, whenever I have to go someplace, or Rachel and I are going to go someplace, I said, we'll go to the weed store or something. We'll go there shortly, soon. I always have to watch a couple more episodes of something, smoke some more bowls, really just like convince myself that I am not beholden to what I just said as far as when we're leaving before I'm ready to leave. It's it's insane, but I don't know how to explain why it is. I don't understand exactly why I do that, but I do. I hate the idea of, like, one thing that cannot possibly happen is this. If I'm taking a nap and I have some sort of an appointment, like yesterday, I was taking a nap and I knew I had a 6 o'clock that this guy wanted to interview me. So I make sure to get up no later than 5:40. I need at least 20 minutes, ideally 30 minutes, after getting up before I have to do anything. And in fact, by the time the interview started, I was woken up. But it takes me a long time to wake up. When I first wake up and I come outside, I'm often still not really awake. And Rachel will talk to me, and I just look at her and won't say anything. And maybe I'll just, or whatever. But I explained to her right away that if you're going to have a bad interaction with me, it's going to be right after I wake up. Because I don't, when I will wake up first, until I decide I'm ready to start talking, I want no words. It's strange, right? It's like I'm so word oriented, but there's a period of time between waking up and being awake that in which I want no words. I won't say anything. Just don't talk to me. I'm not sure why that is. Like this morning, I woke up and I went pee, and it was like 6:30, and I'm like, I'm gonna go back to bed. And I lay back down in bed, and I tossed and turned for a little bit, and I said, I don't think I'm gonna go back to sleep. So then I made some coffee, took a couple Adderalls, smoked another cigarette, and then I said, okay, I don't like that comment I just read. It says I'm an ESTP. So let me go explain why I don't like it. Go live. Well, so it's like the moment in which I go from not yet woke up guy to engaged guy just sort of passes without me noticing it somehow. But it's like I transition naturally at that point once I'm awake to live streaming because I've read something that irritated me, or like I was gonna title this stream another day, another holler, because it feels like I'm always having to holler at somebody, Like last night, there were a lot of trolls coming in, and they were trying their best. It's kind of exciting though. It's like roller derby around here sometimes. So it's like as far as the trolls go, it's a double-edged question. On the one hand, it's an issue of whether or not they're bothering me or I'm enjoying their pitches. They're pitching me things, and I'm enjoying batting practice. But me enjoying batting practice is not necessarily conducive to other people enjoying being around here. So I've got two reasons to stay on top of the trolls. One, sometimes I get sick of playing batting practice, and I'm still playing batting practice, and then I get mad, and then I walk away from the live stream going like, God damn it, I spent too much time playing batting practice, and now I'm annoyed. Because, of course, the people who are coming in, I don't know if they're it would seem to me that they're probably not bright enough or engaged in the idea enough to like do the very subtle thing of of purposefully making bad arguments that might actually be made, knowing that it's bad enough to evoke a response, but not so bad as to be ignored, and not good enough to be dealt with seriously, as not good enough to be dealt with positively. In other words, I don't think people are really good enough at making attacks to be meta attacking me. But even if they are, I mean, it's an ongoing process of managing the thing, right? It's like there's no single solution or answer or whatever. It's just both sides evolve, I guess. The spite monkeys try different things occasionally. They just aren't that creative, really, but they make an effort to adjust somewhat and try new approaches. And I guess I adjust in that I have a lot less. Trolls spend a lot less time here before getting banned than they used to. I used to afford more benefit of the doubt than I do now. Well, a good example of a meta attack would be to slowly be less wrong on purpose in order to convince me I'm making progress with you, while knowing then also that when the time comes right, you'll backslide. So you're just making me waste my time, believing that I'm helping you grow, but actually just dancing to your meta attack. Now, hopefully, I'm somewhat protected from that by the fact that, to get me to engage a given topic, somebody's got to say something interesting enough to engage, unless there's very few people here. Like right now, I'd engage most things that get brought up, but I still haven't read all of the things out loud. Let's see what they say. Can be engaging conversationalists, able to express their own complicated ideas and to follow the ideas of others. When arguing issues, however, they may deliberately employ debate skills to the serious disadvantage of their opponents. Right. And that's what I hope I don't do. I hope I don't employ debate skills to the disadvantage of my opponents. I hope instead I employ debate skills to reveal the correct approach to a given thing. And that's a big difference between me and a younger version of me. Let's see what else. Too much noise in the data stream. While whack a troll is a good metaphor, so bumper cars. 1, you're live streaming often enough that they don't have to search very hard for victims. 2, they want attention, any attention. 3, projection. 4, not very bright, but they think they are. Dunning-Kruger. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing about the Dunning-Kruger thing. It's the part of the Dunning-Kruger study that people don't ever reference is the fact that with a little bit of education into a complicated area, people learn that they know much less than they think they do. And so Dunning-Kruger dramatically goes down with a small amount of education. So it's hard to attribute people's coming in here and being so sure that they understand something much better than they do on the grounds of Dunning-Kruger for very long, because like hearing me speak about the subject for somebody who's not invested with their ego into the matter is a good way to relieve the Dunning-Kruger of somebody who thinks they understand cognitive functions but really don't understand it at all. Because when I start parsing out exactly my positions on how it works, people realize, oh, okay, this is pretty complicated. There's a lot of shit to it, and I don't really want to learn it all. And now I understand that there's a scope of learning that I haven't attained that would help me understand this better. But my presumptions going in were that the scope of that was much smaller than it is. So I think the projection thing is, I mean, look, I think that most people who come in here specifically to shit on me do so because they find me threatening. And I'm not, I get the idea of feeling threatened. I've felt threatened before by individuals. I find certain things that are really great examples of what I think I'm good at to be threatening in some way. But I just don't, I'm not quite sure how one persists in that state for a very long time, though. I get finding something or someone threatening, but, you know, it's like, if in fact you find, let's say a person named Kevin, whatever, finds me threatening, he may try to attack a couple of times, but to the extent that that doesn't work, it's going to reinforce him finding me threatening. At that point, it would seem natural that he'd either shift tactics, like, in other words, try to identify himself with something else that doesn't position me in a threatening way, or if you can't beat him, join him, or do some objective analysis saying, okay, I need to value who I am a little bit more, and I won't be so concerned about what I'm not. But to persist in that state of I'm threatened and attacking, like to try to reduce the threatening thing to something less threatening, to persist in that over time is strange, because I don't think it's having that effect for them. In other words, I don't think coming in and attacking me is making me less threatening to them. So I'm not sure why they would persist in it for such a long time. But whatever. People do what they do for whatever reasons they do it. I feel fortunate, like, in the modern world, the biggest threat that people make against each other, and the biggest threat that has leverage potentially, is revelation of secrets. When ENFJ narcissist Nick was living with me and Kimberly for a while, periodically he'd have these conversations with me where he said, okay, but Eric, look, we're buds. Come on, you can tell me what's the real dirt. And I'd say, what do you mean? There is no real dirt. Like, what are you talking about? What do you really? And so I'd sort of think about it and be like, well, I guess, I fear, but that's just sort of the same sort of trying to be honest about myself with myself that I always do. And so he was very frustrated, I think, by his inability to get dirt on me. I think in general, people these days feel like when you want to attack somebody, what you do is you reveal hidden truths about them. And so I feel very fortunate that I have a long-standing policy of not having secrets, of not having hidden truths, that I'm not trying to protect my ego by hiding the truth. And so I don't, it's like when Becky tried to get me by revealing my secrets to my dad. I doubt there was much in there that surprised him. I'm not living a lie. But it seems that almost everybody feels somewhat vulnerable about having information about them revealed. Either because they worry that their digital identity will allow somebody to access their physical world. Like, I don't want somebody from the internet coming to my house, but that actually happened to me. So, and it didn't really bother me, frankly. I was just like, well, that's kind of crazy. And when Brittany showed up unannounced at my house in Laverne, knocked on the door, and our first question, of course, was, "How the fuck did you get our address?" Well, she had purchased something, a shirt, back when I had shirts for sale, and I had written our return address on it. So that's how she got our address. Anyway, a lot of people would go, oh, "Okay, that's it. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is a risk, Eric. This is a danger of the internet, and this is a danger of being all a public figure or whatever." But I didn't find it a problem, really. I don't have a problem setting boundaries either. I said, "Oh, this is interesting. Let's go have video. Let's go have lunch, make a video or something." Now go away. I have no problem with that. Hell no, you're not staying here. I have no problem with that. That's not an issue for me. I have no problem saying no. Some people have a problem saying no. I'm not one of those problems. Yeah, this is a Spyderco. And it's my favorite knife. As far as the aesthetics go, it's funny. I've had it for so long and I've become so accustomed to it that I kind of forgot that when I first saw these, I thought they looked cheap. Of course they're not, but it's because this is like plastic looking or whatever. Whereas this is a Gerber, I think. Yeah, this is a Gerber. And this part is some kind of, ceramic metal kind of thing. Hi, Nicola. What do I use these for? And see, this is the thing about, like, England is nuts. England talks about making laws about carrying knives around and stuff. What do I use these knives for? I carry them around all the time. I use mostly to stir coffee and open packages and stuff. Sometimes I pick my nails with it. I've never stabbed anyone or anything with it that's alive, I have a couple other knives around here too. I like knives too, Legends Fall. And this is something that Taylor and I realized we had in common early on. And I think ESTPs and ENTPs have in common in general. We like cool little things, like cool little shit. Like, ooh, look, it's a couple of little springs and some ball bearings and stuff. Cool. ESTPs and ENTPs both like little shit like that, Probably have a whole drawer of cool little shit. Am I right or am I right or am I right? Legends Fall. Is it true that ESTPs, like ENTPs, enjoy cool little shit? Cool things. Of course, we have slightly different taste in cool things. So, like, ESTP probably has some empty bullet shells that they found by when they were pulled over in some place, and somebody had been shooting there, and they pick up all the copper bullet slot things, whatever they're called, shells, I guess.
They probably have like I'd pick up those things too, you know. I pick up when I go out in the desert or something, and I see nuts and bolts. So I pick them up and put them in my pocket, take them home. Oh, these are perfectly good nuts and bolts. So I'm gonna keep these, or you know, like, oh, look at this. What is this? And it's like something that it's some sort of mechanism that like folds this way and turns, and then folds this way and turns and blah blah blah. Oh, I'm definitely taking this, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but I'm taking it. This is wonderful. This thing, I love it. I got lots of rocks. I collect rocks when I go out in the world. You know, every time Rachel and I go someplace that's naturey, I'm always on the lookout for cool rocks. What makes a rock cool? Well, there's a couple of qualities to a rock that can make it cool. For example, if it looks like a state, a United States state, that qualifies to join my collection of cool rocks. I'd love to have the entire United States, all of the states in rock form that I naturally found. Not that I chipped it into that shape, but just naturally found. Oh, look, there's Texas. Oh, look, there's Indiana. Oh my gosh, is that Delaware? Also, I try to find rocks that look like letters of the alphabet. Ideally, I like to get A, B, C, all the 26 of them. Collect them all. Got to catch them all. This is called Rock Pokemon. If you'd like to play along at home. So I've got my rocks that look like states. I've got rocks that look like letters. And then I've got cool rocks. Cool rocks are rocks that either look like a miniature version of a big rock. Those are great. Or that have very good, how many different ways can you set it down so that it stably sits? Okay. If it's got like 6 flat parts that you can turn it like this and it's stable, this is stable, this is stable, that's a very cool rock. Okay. Those are hard to find, right? You got to find a rock that has an unusual number of flat surfaces and a certain kind of balance so that when you put it on each of the flat surfaces, it doesn't fall over. That's a special rock. I also like rocks that clearly show, distinct kinds of rocks within a single rock. Like there's this clear layer of pink quartz, and then beneath that, like a black layer of basalt, and beneath that, like this like sandstone or something. It's all compressed into one rock. Well, that's a cool rock, right? Are you guys all taking notes? I hope you're taking notes on cool rocks and how to collect them. Because if you're not, what am I doing here? Why do I bother coming here, preparing these lectures, providing them for you if you're not even going to be taking notes? Sometimes I feel like I'm just wasting my time. No, Diamond. No, that rock is not cool. Were you listening at all? That's totally an uncool rock. Just a regular rock. Put it back. Just throw it down. Just drop it. Look, finding cool rocks is a way of life. If you're not going to take it seriously, just get out of here. Are the rest of you ready to find some cool rocks? Diamond, are you with us now? On the same page? All right. I'm looking for letters. I'm looking for states. I'm looking for miniatures. And I'm looking for sitters and striations. Okay. You got 5 kinds of cool rocks. Got your sandwich rocks. That's what you might call your striations. It's like quartz here, granite here, sandstone here, all one rock. You got your multi-sitters. You got mini flat sides so you can sit it this way, this way, this way, this way, and it still stays in put. You've got your miniatures. Miniatures it's a small rock, but it looks like a giant crag overhanging, but in small form. Yeah, me too. Well, I collect a bunch in my pocket, and then before I get in the car, I throw them all away except for like one of them. That's what I do. It's the Kimberly shopping approach. Kimberly would do that, and when she would go shopping, she'd
put a bunch of things in her cart, and then go around and put back the ones she decided she didn't want that much, and just go to the front with the the thing that she wanted. It's like, that's a dumb way to shop, but that's how I shop for cool rocks. Okay, because you want to take away from your experience, say the one or two coolest rocks you find the whole time. You're never going to know which ones are the coolest until you look at them all at the end and say, okay, these two are the coolest, so the rest of them I'm just going to throw away. Because I know I'm not going to bring a whole box of rocks in my car. What am I going to do with them when I get home? The good news is now I have an additional purpose for rocks, which is I find a cool, super cool rock. I can put it in the aquarium as part of the ground of the aquarium, you know. It's got to be an ISFJ thing. The one I dated over, somebody did that too. Isn't that a weird thing to do? You go around and you put into your cart everything you might like to get in theory, and then you pare it down to the things you're actually going to get. That's weird to me, but that's how she liked to do it. The thing is, I rarely went to the store with her as a consequence because it drove me nuts. Yeah, it just like INTJ, it drove me fucking nuts. So usually we understood that if she was going to the store, if it was going to be that kind of shopping, if we weren't just running in to get something, I was not going with her because it drove me fucking crazy. Why? You know, like the first time you go, why are you putting that can of Glade into the cart? We don't use air freshener. Well, I'm not getting it. Then why are you putting it in the cart? Because I might want to. Okay. I'll be out on the side smoking a cigarette. This is ridiculous. Good stoning rocks are worth their weight in stones. Yeah, I have a full collection of good stoning rocks. In case we bring back stoning the adulteresses, I want to be first in line, ready to throw. Hey, this live stream was only supposed to last 3 hours. Somebody snuck in an extra 22 minutes. I think we know who it was. It was Boba Fett. He's always trying to pull shit like that. Oh, Boba Fett. I only know thee from the original trilogy. You were so under-realized as a human being in the original trilogy. When you stone a rock, you tend to make that rock you stone into smaller rocks, as well as the stoning rocks you stone it with, as the two rocks colliding creates breakage. All right. I'm going to wrap this up with a song. The song for today, okay? A song of wisdom, a song of truth, a song of advice for everybody, okay? Jazzy, jazzy, jazz, jazz, jazz. Jazzy, jazzy, jazz, jazz, jazz. Jazzy, jazz, 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 jazz. Fucking jazz, right? It's like, okay, jazz. Can you get a little bit of, I don't know, coolness or something, jazz? It's just so not cool. Today's Monday, and that means it rains. No longer Sunday, so put away your games.
Time to get on making selves more important than this. You sitting there watching me, and I'm sitting here trying to read what you say to me. So far away, but now today is time. So when we each leave here in just a little bit, we'll each accomplish our ultimate goal, and it will relieve all of our ontological doubt. And that's why today's the day to shout. Just remember that today is a day to shout. Ah! Like that. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.